why Shadow the Hedgehog isn't edgy, or the history of Shadow the Hedgehog. Honestly, once this video is done, you still will probably feel that Shadow is in fact edgy, but I wanted an excuse and a good title to go down the history of Shadow, since he actually has a character arc in the games. That, and ahead of the Sonic 3 movie coming this December 2024, it'll be nice to refresh on our favorite anti-hero hedgehog. We'll be using the games as reference, by the way. Now yes, technically it's also the 30th anniversary of our boy Knuckles too, but Shadow has that hog in him. I just want to go on record and say that I had to do that joke. It is funny, but it's also stupid, and I completely understand if you do not like, comment, and subscribe to this video. I actually understand if you dislike this video after that. Anyways, here we go. To understand the history of Shadow the Hedgehog, you have to understand the history of his creator, Professor Gerald Robotnik, as the grandfather of one Dr. Robotnik, our beloved Dr. Eggman. See, Professor Robotnik was a great scientist, but what launched him into fame in the eyes of the world was the creation of the first Bernal Sphere space colony called Ark. The space colony Ark was a feat of engineering unseen, and while Gerald himself was most likely not out in space in a space suit, building it piece by piece with hammer and nail in orbit, he was definitely its architect, evident by the underside of the colony resembling his face. Narcissism runs in the family. We also can't confirm or not confirm that he wasn't out in space building it by hand, so take that as you will. If we use the Sonic X capture card as a reference, the Ark's face in diameter from one end to the other is 15 kilometers or 9.32 miles long. The Ark is massive, a literal city in space once you consider how many floors it houses vertically and the hanging buildings along the face as well as the dome itself. The space colony Ark became the place where the world's breast? I don't think so. The space colony Ark became the place where the world's best and brightest came to live and do research. Just don't challenge the Ark to a staring contest, you will lose. The GUN, or Guardian Units of Nation, is an international military force that serves also as the United Federation's military on Sonic's Earth. Upon realizing Gerald's brilliance, the United Federation approached Professor Robotnik to research the secret to immortality. Initially, Gerald refused, believing such a thing was not something humanity should meddle with. However, Gerald had a granddaughter, one Maria Robotnik, who he loved a great deal, and unfortunately he discovered she had a terminal disease, neuroimmune deficiency syndrome, an incurable and fatal disease. So Gerald changed his mind with the hope that in trying to research immortality, he could co-opt the research away from possible weaponization for military use and instead seek a cure for Maria. His fellow researchers, even with a brilliant mind like Gerald's on board, would still dub the project Project Shadow, because you cannot create a shadow. Gerald believed the name sounded villainous. The first major breakthrough came with researching the Chaos Emeralds, which would lead to the creation of Chaos Drives, as featured in Sonic Adventure 2 when you destroyed gun robots, the little floating colorful crystal things. Essentially, these drives were the energy of the Chaos Emeralds crystallized, and would prove useful in the first major creation in Project Shadow, the Bio-Lizard. Also called the Prototype, the Bio-Lizard was created because certain lizard species have been known to regenerate limbs. The Bio-Lizard was given a chaos control inducing organ as well as an external engine powered by these chaos drives. And while the Bio-Lizard was successful in several areas like being able to regenerate, recover injury, and reproduce, it ended up having to heavily rely on its life support system to survive, as well as it possessed low intelligence, so it would become unruly and was more primitive and animal-like than desired. Rumor, so this is speculation, was eventually Gerald was the only one it even listened to, though this info is a bit up in the air. The Bio-Lizard was originally a lot smaller, but it grew exponentially to the size we see today. Unfortunately, the Bio-Lizard's violent nature began to make other scientists worry about Project Shadow. At some point after this time, Gerald came across the Gizoid, or Gizoid. I'm actually still not sure how to pronounce that. Apparently during the time of researching an ancient stone tablet in Knuckles' clan's ancient history, depicting a fight between Perfect Chaos and Supersonic. 3 things came from this. 1. Gerald decided to research the Gizoid more. 2. The artificial chaos would be born based off of chaos designs from this tablet. And 3. Shadow's design would be inspired by Supersonic's shape in this tablet. The artificial chaos, enemies mainly present in Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog 2005, were mainly on board the Ark stages, and they were powered by, you guessed it, the Chaos Drives we mentioned before, while possessing the ability to manipulate their mostly water bodies via being computer controlled. We'll come back to them. Gizoid, which you might better know as Emerl from Sonic Battle or the tournament arc in Sonic X, is basically a Sharingan if it was a robot. He can copy moves. Furthermore, you can establish a link with it to gain command over him, as Gerald did by showing his collection of modern weapons to it. His hopes was people would not use Emerl for nefarious reasons by having him link with it. Just in case, he looked into how to re-establish a link should it be broken. Now as for Shadow, we first must explain Black Doom, leader of the Black Arms, a race of alien beings whose black comet passes by Earth every 50 years. Gerald made contact with Black Doom as the black comet was passing the arc in orbit. Black Doom agreed to help Professor Gerald with his research, going so far as to give Gerald some of his own alien DNA to use in exchange. When the black comet returned in 50 years, Shadow would have to deliver him the 7 Chaos Emeralds. After they agreed, work began on Project Shadow anew. Unconfirmed is the time the Black Comet was in orbit, basically how long, because some sources say Black Doom's DNA was used as far back as the Bio-Lizard, and yet Black Doom was still there to see Shadow's awakening. Speaking of, remember that stone tablet in Knuckles' clan's history? Supersonic was in fact what Shadow's design was based on, like in-universe. He looks like Supersonic on purpose, at least until recent games started changing Supersonic's look a bit. However, Gerald would impart the heart and soul, based off Maria, the peak of benevolence essentially, onto Shadow in hopes that he would not become a weapon. Shadow did not need machinery to live, like the Bio-Lizard, possessed high levels of intelligence and could do tasks on his own, but what really deemed him a success was that he was, successfully, immortal. Now unconfirmed is he also apparently had an immortal immune system, meaning no sickness could afflict him, thus finding a cure for Maria was one step closer. Meeting with Black Doom, however, gave pause to Professor Gerald, as he caught wind of the alien leader's more sinister nature, not trusting the reasons they would need the 7 Chaos Emeralds in the future. This led to the creation of the massive Eclipse Cannon, built into the nose of the Ark itself. It technically was a weapon of mass destruction, sure, but it was built to defend Earth from the Black Arms in 50 years when the Black Comet returned by harnessing the power of the Chaos Emeralds for good. Fortunately, Shadow had gone to be on good terms with many that lived aboard the Ark, even befriending Maria Robotnik, as the two would often contemplate what being on Earth was like and what it would be like to go there one day. Maria's condition left her unable to leave the Ark, needing assistance from the hospital and the low gravity of the Ark helping to mitigate her condition, but perhaps with a cure, she and Shadow could go there one day, especially with Shadow usually pondering over why he exists or why he was even created, believing the answers to be down there somewhere. Unfortunately, the events that would see these days of his success crushed were already in motion. First, scientists were wary ever since the Bio-Lizard's creation and unruly behavior. Gunn was suspicious since it was leaked of the prototype's behavior, most likely by scientists working with Gerald himself. Second, after Shadow's awakening, at some point the artificial chaos went on a rampage in the labs, because poor Professor Gerald crossed the positive and negative nodes for them. In his own words, he must be getting old. They were quelled by Gunn forces on hand and Shadow himself. Third, in a bid to buy more time, since Gunn wanted to now freeze the research and shut the Ark down, Gerald gave Gunn Emerl, and unfortunately those who made a link with him were not as responsible as Gerald, leaving Emerl to absorb a large amount of weaponry and rampage across the entire Ark, causing critical damage, and striking more fear into the GUN. Combined with the realization of the existence of the Eclipse Cannon, which I guess purpose was kept secret, probably to deceive Black Doom who was possibly still around, the GUN decided the Ark was to be shut down by force. Hence, the Ark's seal destruction operation was underway, an operation that would, in public eyes, be told as a biohazard leak had broke out on the Ark, so the entire Ark needed to be shut down to contain it. In reality, Gunn was going up there to kill every scientist and person that knew about Project Shadow and arrest Gerald Robotnik himself, who would then be blamed for this biohazard leak. Now this is not, well, I say fun fact, but it's more like speculation, fun speculation. But you know how the Ark clearly has external defenses. We see this in all the levels in Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog especially. Ones that, under Gerald, should have been able to keep the invading gun forces at bay at least long enough for scientists to escape. Black Doom has an interesting voice line if you're playing the level The Doom in Shadow the Hedgehog 2005, where if you go along Maria's route but with Black Doom present instead, and you find like this map room, he will state something along the lines of, even the Ark's best defenses mean nothing if there's a traitor working on the inside.
Even the Ark's best defense system means nothing if there is a traitor working on the inside.
This could mean Black Doom did learn of the Eclipse cannon, and he's the one who essentially in some way either disabled or crippled or just lowered the Ark's defenses to allow the gun raid to go far faster than they should have, far sooner. Food for thought. Essentially, Black Doom could be possibly the reason that the raid ended up being so terrible. What a villain. Obviously, a counterpoint is, well, couldn't it just have been one of the scientists that did it? Yes, but the reason I don't necessarily think that's the case is because these gun, troops that were coming in and raiding the Ark, they were gunning for everybody that knew about Project Shadow. So if it was a scientist that didn't trust Gerald because they worked on Project Shadow, you're getting axed, buddy. You don't want the defenses to go down because they're coming for you anyways. The infamous raid on the Ark saw all who knew about Project Shadow eliminated, with Gerald sending Shadow to Maria to get off the Ark immediately, while Gerald was arrested. During their escape to the capsule room, featured in Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog cutscenes, gun soldiers would be right on their trail, one fatally shooting Maria as she pulled the switch to jettison Shadow's escape pod. She would fortunately impart on him her final wish.
Shadow, I beg of you, please, do it for me. For Maria! Future, for all people who live on that planet, give them a chance to be happy. Let them live for their dreams. Shadow, I know you can do it. That's the reason why you were brought into this world. Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog.
I promised her, and I must keep that promise.
With her final words being, bring hope to humanity, thus answering his kind of wonders of why he was created and what his purpose was. At least in her eyes. The Ark would be shut down, but not before Professor Gerald was arrested. But not also before the biolizard deep inside the Ark laid waste to a large amount of the invading gun forces. Gerald would be contained at the GUN outpost called Prison Island, where Shadow would also be captured and sealed away upon his escape pods landing on Earth at some point. Gerald would learn that Maria's name was amongst the list of those who died and be driven into despair and grief beyond belief. Instead of continuing Project Shadow's research for the military, he began his plans for revenge on all of humanity for Maria's death. The Ark had a Doomsday-style Armageddon program that he originally made to spite the Black Arms, should they seize the Ark in their return and try using the Eclipse cannon. It was repurposed to activate when anyone tried using all 7 Chaos Emeralds in the Eclipse cannon. To achieve this, he would brainwash or at least suppress parts of Shadow's memory while he was in suspended animation, so he would not fully remember Maria's wish, and direct any who awakened him to help him gather the 7 Chaos Emeralds to trigger this event. Even the biolizard, who somehow would listen to Gerald, and he alone, would ensure that if the program was activated and someone tried to stop it, he would summon and waylay anyone who tried to deactivate the Ark's core. Gunn caught whiff of Gerald's plans and proceeded to execute him via firing squad, but not before recording him saying his last words, which depicted his plan. Intermission time. Have you eaten? Make sure to stretch. Maybe get up for a few minutes. Stay hydrated. Remember, this is a video. As much as the watch time is appreciated, you can pause it and come back to it all the same. Now, you may still believe Shadow to be edgy, but if I was created because the military wanted to weaponize immortality, then they got cold feet and decided to storm my house, arrest my creator, shoot and fatally kill my best friend in front of my face as I was launched away in an escape pod, I might be more than a little grumpy. Especially when, despite all that, said best friend asked me to still protect and look out for humanity. The same humanity whose government just costed me everything for existing. But I guess the difference is I consider edgy to be more for people who try to be edgy on purpose without a reason, whose life isn't perfect but far from tragic. They just try to make edgy like their personality for some reason. Not for people who actually went through terrible things. But that's just my opinion. What's yours? Let's continue. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, dubbed the Project Shadow or Space Colony Arc incident in universe, takes place a short time after Super Sonic defeats Perfect Chaos in the final battle of Sonic Adventure 1. Dr. Eggman learns of Professor Gerald's diary and the entry vaguely telling of Project Shadow as a weapon to use to conquer the world if awakened. Eggman, with the Chaos Emerald, attacks Prison Island and releases Shadow the Hedgehog, who, unknown to the Hedgehog, does not fully remember Maria's wish and sets Professor Gerald's plan in motion, telling Eggman of the Space Colony Arc and to bring the Chaos Emeralds. Now this part's also speculation, but remember how Shadow's design is literally based off of Super Sonic? So the idea that during this game, like the average person believes that Shadow is Sonic isn't that far-fetched in my opinion, because they just saw Sonic when he got Chaos Emeralds transform anyways into Super Sonic, whose silhouette is the same as Shadow's. So here is now what they believe could be Sonic on the news, who just stole a Chaos Emerald and might have just transformed again. Maybe different amounts of Chaos Emeralds mean different transformations. Now obviously as the player, we know that it's not, so we think it's silly. And obviously the GUN knows it's not, so they're obviously a little bit sus too. They know the difference between Sonic and Shadow for a long time, so what are you doing? You just want to arrest Sonic just to arrest Sonic, I guess. He's a loose cannon, and you don't like that. They had their own agenda at that point. But like the average Joe of the world, not understanding that that's a whole new hedgehog, and instead could just be the same hedgehog that just transformed with Chaos Emeralds before, I don't think that's that far-fetched. Fast forward to the last story, where Eggman, upon gathering the last emerald and using it for the Eclipse Cannon, triggers the Doomsday program, as worldwide every screen begins to play the recording of Gerald's moments before execution, explaining,
"This is a death sentence for every human being on Earth. If my calculations are correct, the space colony Ark will impact the Earth in 27 minutes and 53 seconds. All of you will be destroyed, along with your beloved planet Earth."
I plan to give you a taste of my revenge once all the 7 Chaos Emeralds are collected. Once this program has been initiated, it cannot be disabled. All of you ungrateful humans who took everything away from me will feel my loss and despair. Shadow, in on the plan from the start, would just wait for Oblivion, believing this was also Maria's wish too, while everyone else would team up to get to the core of the Ark, since Knuckles was not only present, but had the Master Emerald, which could shut down the Chaos Emeralds. However, Amy, who was left behind, would engage Shadow in conversation and trigger Maria's full wish to come back to him by uttering the same words herself, and immediately changing Shadow's mind on the matter. In the core of the Ark, the Biolizard would in fact be summoned to stop Sonic and Knuckles, but Shadow would intervene, battling his prototype, while Sonic and Knuckles got to the core and disabled the Chaos Emeralds. Striking the life support like some brutal menace, Shadow seemingly downed the Biolizard, and the Ark was stopped. Until it wasn't. The Biolizard would regenerate and recover. Remember, it could do that. It did, and used Chaos Control to fuse with the tip of the still opened Eclipse Cannon. Kinky. Doing so allowed it to tap into the Ark's power as well as its own to continue dragging the entire colony towards Earth. Those are some powerful cheeks. Sonic and Shadow would counter this by going super with the 7 Chaos Emeralds. The Biolizard, now dubbed the Final Hazard, had weak spots, swelling areas made from its trouble with handling extreme temperatures, much like the cold of space and the heat of the atmosphere at high speeds. At the climax of the event, which saw the Biolizard defeated, the Ark was not powerful enough to reverse course on its own, so Super Sonic and Super Shadow had to use a massive Chaos Control to warp the entire colony back to a stable orbit, seemingly at the cost of all of Shadow's power, having fought the Biolizard twice now in a row already. Shadow was seen falling to Earth declaring, "Maria, this is what you wanted, right? This is my promise I made to you," before appearing to die. Eggman would reflect on these events as they waited to see if Sonic and Shadow survive, the former joining the rest and informing that the latter had perished. Eggman originally became a scientist because of his grandfather, Gerald, and all the great things he accomplished. He was Eggman's hero, and he wanted to become a great scientist just like him. When questioning, though, if Gerald meant to destroy them, actually opening up, having some depth, Tails just responded that he didn't know, but what he did know is they all did it together. Good job, Fox. Good hecking job. The Ark would go into a hibernation mode and would self-sustain in orbit for now. In the beginning of Sonic Heroes, if you play Team Dark story mode, Rouge the Bat will infiltrate an Eggman base for treasure, but instead find Shadow the Hedgehog asleep in a stasis pod. Freeing him also woke up E123 Omega, who hated Eggman for forgetting him in this base. In reality, Eggman was the ultimate robot Eggman had placed there for Shadow containment, but that's for later, we'll get back to that. For now, Shadow was back, but with horrible amnesia. A critical point in the story comes after beating the Egg Albatross boss in Rail Canyon, where a bisected Shadow android's remains lay at Shadow's feet as he's silent. Before anything can be spoken by Rouge, who notices, Shadow simply tells the team that they need to get going because time is not on their side to stop the Egg Fleet, which is the whole plot of the whole game, is the Egg Fleet will launch in 3 days' time. A massive fleet that would dominate the entire planet if it launches. The end of Team Dark storyline sees the trio beat Eggman on the Egg Fleet. Rouge, still seeking Eggman's treasure, finds a room with hundreds of sleeping Shadows. Turns out they're all Shadow androids, to which Omega shows up to destroy them all, commenting that for the androids to exist, the real one must still exist too. But for now, the Shadow we seem to have back is possibly an android. Enter the Shadow the Hedgehog game, which I'll call Shadow 2005 to help you tell the difference from when I'm talking about the game from 2005 and Shadow himself. Shortly after Sonic Heroes, the Black Comet is seen in the newspapers because it has in fact been 50 years and is returning. Shadow, on the edge of the city of Westopolis, witnesses as the skies darken with red clouds and the Black Arms begin a global invasion of Earth. Doom's Eye, Black Doom's third eye creature thing, immediately finds Shadow and projects an image of Black Doom to the Hedgehog before telling him the promised time is nearly here and to bring him the 7 Chaos Emeralds as promised before departing. Shadow figured whether he listens to Black Doom or not, one way to get his memories back is to get those Chaos Emeralds. See, the issue that plagues Shadow is his amnesia is so severe he only remembers one thing, the scene of Maria getting shot, to which he doesn't even fully remember who Maria is. The 7 Chaos Emeralds together are said to make a miracle happen, so memory restoration is not that far-fetched. Side note, Black Doom's English voice actor is the same as Goku's English voice actor. Seriously, you can find videos of Sean Schemmel doing Black Doom's voice at booths, and he could just do it without filter, no pitch machine. Might be a product of yelling for a living perhaps, but it is impressive. If I tried to do it without a filter especially, it'd be bad. It'd be something like this. Go. Oh, yeah, this is gonna hurt. Go, Shadow. Bring me the 7 Chaos Emeralds and subscribe to Gamrison. Go. Bring me the 7 Chaos Emeralds and subscribe to Gamrison. Or something like that. It wouldn't be pretty. It's really impressive to think about though. Shadow 2005 is a choose-your-own-adventure action platformer game with 21 levels spread over 5 main endings of evil, semi-dark, neutral, semi-good, and hero, with 6 stages played per run, about 40 minutes per run with cutscenes, for 326 possible endings. I know, I did them all back in 2015. The evil route is essentially Black Doom manipulating Shadow into his hatred of humans. The semi-dark route is similar but with some reserves and in fact getting to relive the infamous gun raid on the Ark 50 years ago, the Doom that we talked about earlier. The neutral run is interesting because as Shadow pieces memories back together, you keep coming across Eggman's bases full of Shadow androids and determine you are in fact a Shadow android imparted with the original Shadow's memories, who is in fact dead. Semi-Good sees Shadow piece together that his existence is at fault for the deaths of everyone aboard the Ark 50 years ago, but also vowing their memories justice and closure. And Hero sees Shadow piece back together who Maria was and her promise, which prompts a team-up with Sonic to beat Black Doom aboard the Black Comet. A new character introduced in Shadow the Hedgehog 2005 was the Gun Commander, an older man with a strong dislike of Shadow the Hedgehog. Once the invasion begins and the soldier reports seeing Shadow in the area with the Black Arms, the commander orders all hands mobilized. Turns out the commander was a young boy on the Ark 50 years ago. He saw the awakening of Shadow and blamed him, Gerald, and Black Doom, who was present for the destruction of the Ark and the deaths of everyone on board it. This especially included Maria, who the commander was friends with, who he described was like a sister to him. Gun forces will be hostile to you during levels, especially if you're doing the evil routes, because of this. The exception is hero levels, to which I guess Gun maybe appreciates the help in the field combating the Black Arms. No matter what way you play, once you have beaten the final 5 stages once, each ending, or 10 times total, you unlock the last way, the final story of Shadow 2005. Here, Shadow and most of the cast are on board the Black Comet, Shadow possessing the 7 Chaos Emeralds. Black Doom arrives to acquire the emeralds, to which Sonic tells Shadow not to give them. Shadow seemingly isn't going to give them anyways, once Eggman and Rouge pipe in to mention Black Doom's plans to destroy the world. But unfortunately, Black Doom laughs and reveals the Black Arms are not here to destroy humanity, but to save it from itself. He takes the emeralds anyways and uses a massive chaos control to teleport the Black Comet to the planet's surface. The comet, plugging into Earth via massive tendrils that just jut out of it upon landing. Making matters worse, a nerve gas was released, invisible to the eye, that paralyzes the heroes. However, Shadow, remembering Maria finally, is unaffected and promises to leave his past behind and destroy Black Doom, chasing him into the comet's inner sanctum. There, Black Doom tries to control Shadow via mind control since his DNA was used to make Shadow. But it turns out Gerald, like Batman contingency plan style, made another recording. This one detailing why the Eclipse Cannon was built, to foil Black Doom when they return, and the 7 Chaos Emeralds' use in powering it. Furthermore, Gerald expresses regret in contacting Black Doom to begin with, but Faith, Shadow, could be counted on to stop him when the time comes. Maria also chimes in the recording, saying the two of them will protect the Earth, right? Black Doom believes it to be foolishness, but Shadow now had the mental strength to beat Black Doom. Doom leaves, leaving the Chaos Emeralds behind. See, Black Doom was one of the earliest villains to not need the emeralds to transform, so he just discards them, a mistake. Shadow would use them to become Super Shadow, to do battle over the city against the now transformed Black Doom, now dubbed Devil Doom. Two major events happen during this fight. One, Eggman reveals to Shadow that he is in fact not an android. He used a robot to save Shadow when he fell. He simply has amnesia, but is in fact the ultimate life form his grandfather created.
Shadow, can you hear me? This might be the last chance I have to speak to you, so what I said about having created you, it was all a lie. Everyone thought you died during that horrible incident, but I rescued you with one of my robots. You lost your memory, that's all. You really are the ultimate life form my grandfather created.
The second is, if the fight lasts 10 minutes, the nerve gas covers the entire Earth, leaving humanity paralyzed.
The time has come. Now that the gas has overrun this tainted world, my reign has begun. Die along with these foolish humans.
See, the Black Arms are saving humanity from itself so that they can eat humanity themselves. Humans would make a perfect energy source for the Black Arms forever. Super Shadow beats Devil Doom, teleports the comet back into space, and destroys it with the 7 Chaos Emeralds via the Eclipse Cannon. Post the events of Last Way and Shadow 2005, you unlock Expert Mode, which of course I beat. During it, it seems you end up patching things up with the Gun Commander, who even invites you to a family dinner given he is about to be a grandfather. Supposedly at this time, bearing the hatchet, Shadow becomes a gun agent, much like Rouge has been since Sonic Adventure 2. To conclude Shadow's arc is to include Mephiles the Dark. Project Shadow, SA2, Sonic Heroes, and Shadow 2005 were all about the reason for his existence, as well as figuring out and confronting his past and putting it behind him, and working to protect Maria's wish. Mephiles the Dark won't be able to challenge him on that front nor manipulate him via his now gone amnesia. But in Sonic 06, Shadow's story deals with his future. If Black Doom was the ghost of Shadow's past, then Mephiles is the ghost of Shadow's possible future. Oh, how ironic fate can be. Just as a flower comes from an egg, or a chicken comes from a seed, everything has its origin, and you need to subscribe to Gamrison. We're too tired to do a better Doom and Mephiles voice. I thank you, Shadow the Hedgehog. In Sonic 06, an overarching plot point, most prominent in Silver the Hedgehog's story, is the destruction of Sonic's world via the Flames of Disaster by Iblis. A devastation so bad that every city is left in a post-apocalyptic state, flooded with lava oceans as well. Shadow's story starts, however, by being sent by gun into an Eggman base to extract Rouge, who is trapped behind enemy lines, at the request of the president himself. Succeeding, they arrive at the extraction point only to get jumped by Eggman and his machines. Rouge, who had stolen the Scepter of Darkness from Eggman, drops it during the battle and it breaks, freeing a Shadow that destroys Eggman's forces, but then burrows into Shadow's shadow before taking the form of Shadow from his shadow. Remember how Project Shadow was called Project Shadow because scientists believe you cannot create a shadow? Well, Mephiles did, from Shadow's shadow, and then became the physical embodiment of Shadow's shadow. Is no one else getting this? Is no one else getting this full circle connection? Just me? Okay. No, that's fine. No, that's whatever. All right, cool. He sends Shadow and Rouge to the future, where they find Omega in standby mode, and eventually find Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles 2, also sent there by Eggman a different way. They eventually get a second Chaos Emerald, because Shadow already possesses one, to induce a portal via Chaos Control to get back home. However, Shadow spots Mephiles and pursues him instead. Rouge hatches a plan to help get Shadow home by finding Omega, filling him in, and he sets himself into standby mode for many years. In the future, when Shadow finds and confronts Mephiles, Mephiles reveals that Shadow in the future had been captured at some point and sealed away. See, when Iblis devastated the Earth, humanity, who feared Shadow and his power, used it as an excuse to hunt him down. Unlike Shadow of old, when Mephiles offers to join forces to punish humanity, Shadow refuses, stating he determines his own destiny. The two fight, and Mephiles is powerful, but Omega shows up off standby mode. The duo force Mephiles back, who flees in a time portal. This time, Shadow and Omega jumping in after him. Team Dark is reunited. It is planned to rebuild a new Scepter of Darkness to seal Mephiles again. While this is going down, however, Shadow and Rouge receive an SOS from the GUN that Omega is battling Mephiles alone at the beach area. The two race to back him up, only to find Omega finishing off Mephiles when they get there, but not before Mephiles taunts Omega with his purpose. When the two arrive, Omega confesses it was he who seals Shadow away in the future, though it is implied it was via being reprogrammed and not purely choice. Rouge expresses how unfair that is, given how Shadow has saved humanity, that they'd still turn on him, but Shadow seems determined still to take down Mephiles and not join him. The three track him down for a final showdown, new scepter in hand. One last time, Mephiles asks to join forces, but Shadow sees through Mephiles' manipulation. See, Mephiles does not want to punish humanity. He wants to destroy time itself, erasing all realities. That, my friends, goes against Maria's wish. So sound the bell, it's time for some shadow boxing. Spoiler alert, Team Dark wins. They try sealing Mephiles away, but he is too powerful this time, shattering the scepter and creating dozens of clones of himself. Believing Shadow's power to be limited, to stop him, he still has to ask Shadow, why fight for those who are willing to persecute him later? To which Shadow replies, if the world chooses to become my enemy, then I will fight like I always have, before taking off his inhibitor rings and decimating the clone army. While this reality is erased at the conclusion of Sonic 06's last story mode, what we still got to see here was Shadow, who was no longer corruptible and no longer susceptible to manipulation because of his amnesia. He had resolve, one to continue Maria's wish despite all of the things humanity did, does, and will do in that reality. Things that warrant some brooding, if not complete depression really. So while I do not believe Shadow is edgy, and I actually just think the word edgy is horribly overused, I do not expect you to share my opinion either, since this more served as a way to kind of go down the history of Shadow the Hedgehog, again, ahead of the release of things like Sonic X Shadow Generations, which will see the return of Black Doom, and Doomseye, somehow, as well as ahead of the coming Sonic 3 movie, which is hinted to be heavily inspired by Sonic Adventure 2, and also possibly Shadow the Hedgehog. Heck, the 24-second trailer uses an orchestra version of Live and Learn, Sonic Adventure 2's main theme. And we already know Shadow will be in it because we already saw him at the end of the second Sonic movie, to which a gun soldier was mentioning to the commander that while scrubbing Eggman's databanks, they came across that he had discovered Project Shadow. I want to see a live-action Space Colony arc. And it's just, and not like a, oh, it's just the International Space. I want to see the arc. Live action. So that's all for this video from me. Again, your opinion might not change, and that's totally fine. I'm not going to judge you if you comment that way, by the way, just to let you know. But thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell notification, the actual subscribe button. But I don't know which video will be next. We're just going to have to wait and see. So till this time, take care, and enjoy pizza responsibly. Thank you for watching.